The resignation letter trembled in Zara Nightingale's hands as she stood outside the mahogany doors of the CEO's office. In exactly 7 seconds, she would walk through those doors and end everything: her career, her dreams, and the painful charade of watching the man she loved prepare to marry another woman. Welcome back to Mr. Roman's Story Vault, where real life experiences teach us powerful lessons about love, courage, and the moments that define us. I'm thrilled you've chosen to spend the next few minutes with me, whether you're a returning viewer or discovering our channel for the first time. Today's story hits close to home for anyone who's ever stood at life's crossroads. Have you ever had to choose between protecting your heart and pursuing your dreams? Between keeping silent to maintain peace and speaking your truth, regardless of the consequences? Have you ever loved someone so deeply that walking away felt like tearing yourself in half? If you've ever faced that impossible choice, where staying hurts but leaving hurts more, then Zara's journey will speak directly to your soul. Because sometimes, friends, the most dangerous risk isn't in what we say. It's in what we leave unspoken. Before we begin, if stories about courage, forbidden love, and second chances speak to your heart, please hit that subscribe button and join our community. Your support helps us bring more of these powerful tales to life. Now, let me take you back 3 years to where this extraordinary journey truly began. 3 years earlier, morning sunlight streamed through the windows of Brood Awakening, the upscale coffee shop across from the Luminary Innovations headquarters. Zara Nightingale sat at a corner table, reviewing her portfolio one final time. Her copper hair was pulled into a sleek bun, her emerald green blouse chosen to bring out her eyes. Small details she hoped would project confidence despite the anxiety churning inside her. This interview could change everything, she whispered to herself, running her finger along the edge of her leather portfolio. Inside were marketing proposals she'd spent weeks perfecting, each page representing countless hours of research and creative problem solving. The position at Luminary Innovations wasn't just another job. It represented everything Zara had worked towards since graduating at the top of her class, a chance to prove herself at a company, revolutionizing the tech industry. A company whose CEO, Kieran Frost, had become a legend for building a billion-dollar empire before his 34th birthday. She checked her watch. 45 minutes until the interview. Just enough time for a final review, a coffee to steady her nerves, and the short walk to the Luminary building. Grande Americano, extra shot, called the barista, placing a steaming cup on the counter. Zara gathered her portfolio and moved toward the pickup area, mentally rehearsing her opening introduction. So focused was she on the interview ahead that she didn't notice the man reaching for the same coffee until it was too late. Their hands brushed, her momentum continued forward, and suddenly hot liquid cascaded over her portfolio, droplets splattering onto her blouse. "Oh my God," Zara gasped, jumping back as the leather folio absorbed the dark liquid. "No, no, no. I am so sorry," said a deep voice, as strong hands quickly grabbed napkins from the nearby dispenser. "Please, let me help." "It's fine," Zara snapped, her voice tight with panic as she accepted the napkins and frantically dabbed at the stained leather. She didn't look up, didn't register anything about the man except his expensive watch and the sleeve of what appeared to be a tailored suit. "Your portfolio, it looks important. Please, let me pay for any damage," he insisted, his voice carrying genuine concern. "Unless you can miraculously undo coffee stains in the next 30 minutes. "There's nothing you can do," Zara replied, finally looking up. The man before her was striking, tall, with dark hair and piercing blue eyes that studied her with unexpected intensity. His expression held something beyond mere apology, interest, perhaps even admiration. "At least take my card," he said, reaching into his jacket pocket. "In case there's anything I can do to make this right." Zara accepted the business card and tucked it into her purse without looking at it. "I really need to go. I have an interview and now I need to figure out how to explain why my portfolio looks like it went swimming in coffee." A slight smile played at the corners of his mouth. Perhaps honesty would work. Accidents happen. "Right. Thanks for the advice," Zara replied, gathering her belongings. Enjoy your coffee. What's left of it anyway? 20 minutes later, Zara sat in the gleaming reception area of Luminary Innovations, still trying to salvage her portfolio. The leather had dried somewhat, but coffee stains marked several key pages of her presentation materials. Her pristine appearance, so carefully cultivated that morning, now felt compromised, much like her confidence. "Miss Nightingale?" The receptionist's crisp voice interrupted her efforts. "They're ready for you now." Heart pounding, Zara followed the woman down a corridor, lined with glass walls showcasing teams of focused employees. At the end stood an imposing conference room with views of the city's skyline. The receptionist opened the door with a discreet nod. "Miss Nightingale for the marketing strategist interview," she announced. Zara stepped into the room, apology for her tardiness already forming on her lips, and froze. Sitting at the head of the conference table, looking as composed as if he'd been there all morning rather than spilling coffee in a cafe, was the man from the coffee shop. His eyes widened momentarily before crinkling with unmistakable amusement. "Miss Nightingale, I presume?" "I'm Kieran Frost, CEO of Luminary Innovations." He gestured to the two other executives flanking him. "I believe we've already met." Heat flooded Zara's cheeks. She had just snapped at the CEO of her dream company. Her career was over before it began. But professionalism kicked in, overriding her momentary panic. She straightened her shoulders and stepped forward with an outstretched hand. "Mr. Frost, what an unexpected way to begin our acquaintance. I apologize for my reaction at the coffee shop." He shook her hand, his grip firm and confident. No apology needed. The fault was entirely mine. The interview proceeded as if the coffee incident had never happened. Kieran asked insightful questions about her previous campaigns, her approach to digital marketing, and her vision for elevating Luminary's brand presence. Despite the damaged portfolio, Zara found herself relaxing into the conversation, her passion for marketing overriding her earlier embarrassment. "Your proposal for our Asia expansion is particularly interesting," Kieran commented, examining one of the coffee-stained pages. "Most candidates focus on traditional markets, but you've identified emerging opportunities we hadn't considered. Technology adoption patterns in Southeast Asia suggest an untapped demographic that aligns perfectly with Luminary's growth strategy," Zara explained, leaning forward slightly. "Your products solve problems they face daily, but your current marketing doesn't speak to them directly." For nearly an hour, the conversation flowed beyond standard interview questions into a genuine exchange of ideas. The two other executives contributed occasionally, but a strange energy had developed between Zara and Kieran, a meeting of minds that felt electric and natural simultaneously. As the interview concluded, Kieran leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing at his lips. "Well, Miss Nightingale, I think we've seen enough. When can you start?" Zara blinked. "I'm sorry." "The job," he clarified, his blue eyes holding hers. "It's yours if you want it." Later that evening, Zara celebrated with her roommate Talia over takeout in their small apartment. "I can't believe I yelled at the CEO and still got the job," Zara laughed, reaching for another spring roll. "Maybe the coffee actually helped, broke the ice in the weirdest way possible." "Or maybe he just recognized talent when he saw it," Talia suggested, refilling their wine glasses. "When do you start?" "Monday. And, get this, the salary is 20% higher than they initially advertised." Talia raised her glass in a toast to coffee spills and new beginnings. As they clinked glasses, Zara's phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. She opened the message and nearly dropped her phone. "Congratulations on the new job. For the record, I spilled my coffee on purpose. It was the only way I could think to talk to you. KF." "No way," Zara breathed, showing the screen to Talia. "Your boss is texting you before you even start, and he's admitting to sabotaging your portfolio?" Talia's eyes widened. "That's either the most romantic or the most concerning thing I've ever heard." "He's joking," Zara said firmly, though her heart had accelerated. "He has to be joking. Either that, or you've got the most unusual meet cute in dating history." "It's not a meet cute," Zara protested. "It's my boss being I don't know what he's being. After a moment's hesitation, she typed a response, and pretty extreme lengths to go to for a conversation. Next time, try hello. Zenin. His reply came seconds later. Hello, Zara. Dinner tomorrow? Strictly professional, of course. KF. She stared at the message, knowing she should decline. Office relationships were complicated enough without adding a power imbalance. Yet, her fingers moved of their own accord. 7 p.m. You choose the place. And you're buying, considering you ruined my portfolio. Zenin. The restaurant Kieran selected was an intimate French bistro tucked away from the main thoroughfares, small enough to feel cozy yet elegant enough to impress. Zara arrived 5 minutes early, dressed in a simple black dress that walked the line between professional and dinner. Appropriate. Kieran was already waiting, standing when he saw her approach. Right on time, he said, his smile genuine as he pulled out her chair. Punctuality is a virtue, she replied, settling across from him. Though I'm surprised you beat me here. Don't CEOs typically run fashionably late? Only the ones who don't value other people's time, he countered. I make it a point never to keep anyone waiting, especially someone I'm trying to impress. The candlelight caught the glint in his eye, and Zara felt a flutter of something dangerous. Is that what this is? An attempt to impress me? Is it working? Zara glanced around at the perfect setting, the reserved corner table, the bottle of wine already breathing beside them. The jury's still out, but I'm curious. How did you know I'd say yes to dinner? I didn't, Kieran admitted. But I've found that success often comes to those willing to risk rejection. Their conversation flowed effortlessly from business to personal interests, discovering shared passions for vintage vinyl records, independent films, and the same local ramen shop. Kieran spoke of building Luminary from his garage after dropping out of MIT, while Zara shared stories of growing up in a small town with big dreams. Why marketing? He asked over dessert, his attention fully focused on her answer. Because it's storytelling with purpose, she replied without hesitation, finding the heart of something and showing others why they should care about it too. Kieran's expression softened. Show me why I should care about you, Zara Nightingale. The question lingered between them, inappropriate yet irresistible, crossing professional boundaries they both recognized. Yet neither moved to retreat from the edge they were approaching. That sounds dangerously close to flirting, Mr. Frost, Zara said quietly. And if it is, then I'd have to remind you that I start working for you on Monday. And if I said I'm willing to navigate those complications? Zara studied him across the table. This man who had built an empire from nothing, who carried confidence like a second skin, yet looked at her now with genuine vulnerability. I'd say that complications have a way of becoming much more complex than we anticipate, she answered carefully, and that rushing into them rarely ends well for anyone involved. Kieran nodded slowly, respect evident in his expression. Cautious and wise, 2 more qualities to add to your impressive list. He signaled for the check. Allow me to clarify my intentions, Ms. Nightingale. I hired you because your marketing vision is exactly what Luminary needs. Your talent stood out regardless of coffee stains or dinner conversations. That won't change. And the rest? Zara asked softly. The rest, he said, his gaze holding hers, is entirely up to you. No pressure, no expectations, no impact on your career either way. Just an acknowledgement that sometimes people connect in unexpected ways, and sometimes those connections are worth exploring, carefully, respectfully, and at whatever pace feels right. As they parted outside the restaurant, Kieran offered his hand, a deliberately professional gesture after an evening that had been anything but. Thank you for dinner, Zara said, shaking his hand briefly. Thank you for taking a chance on a coffee-spilling CEO, he replied with a smile that would linger in her thoughts long after she'd returned home. Walking toward the waiting taxi, Zara felt herself standing at a crossroads. One path predictable and safe, the other unknown and exhilarating. She didn't yet know which she would choose, but for the first time in years, the future held possibilities that made her heart race with equal parts excitement and fear. And sometimes, that combination was exactly where magic began. Zara's first month at Luminary Innovations passed in a whirlwind of meetings, presentations, and immersion into the company culture. She arrived early each morning and stayed late, determined to prove that Kieran had made the right decision hiring her. Their dinner conversation remained an unaddressed undercurrent as they maintained strictly professional interactions in the office. The marketing department occupied the 38th floor, while Kieran's executive suite dominated the 40th. This physical distance helped Zara establish her own reputation among her colleagues without the shadow of favoritism. She quickly gained respect for her innovative ideas and willingness to challenge conventional approaches. During her 6th week, Zara's opportunity to truly shine arrived. The development team had created a revolutionary AI integration for Luminary's flagship product. But the technical language they used to describe it left potential consumers confused rather than excited. The launch was scheduled in 8 weeks, and pre-release buzz had fallen flat. "We need someone who can translate genius into relevance," Rowan Archer, Luminary's CFO and Kieran's childhood friend, commented during the executive meeting where Zara presented her analysis. "I have some thoughts on that," Zara offered, standing to distribute folders containing her proposal. "The problem isn't the product, it's how we're talking about it." For the next 20 minutes, she outlined a campaign that stripped away technical jargon and focused instead on how the AI would transform daily experiences. Her presentation concluded with mock-ups showing emotional scenarios rather than spec sheets. Silence followed her final slide. Zara held her breath, scanning the executives' faces. "This," Kieran said finally, tapping his finger on the folder, "is exactly what we needed." His eyes met hers across the conference table, professional approval mixed with something warmer. "Zara, I want you to lead this campaign. Full creative control. Direct report to me." That afternoon, Kieran's assistant delivered a note requesting Zara's presence in his office to discuss the project parameters. When she arrived, she found him standing by the window, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up as he studied market projections on his tablet. "You've impressed the board," he said without preamble. "Especially Harrison, who hasn't liked a marketing concept in 15 years. "High praise," Zara replied, settling into the chair across from his desk. "Though I suspect they were more impressed by the potential profit margins in my projections than the creative concept." Kieran laughed, abandoning his position by the window to sit across from her. "You've figured out our board members quickly, but I was impressed by both." "Then, I've accomplished my goal," she said with a small smile. His eyes lingered on her face. "Have you? I thought your goal was to revolutionize how people connect with technology." "That's the long-term mission," she acknowledged. "Impressing you was just the first step. Consider me thoroughly impressed." He leaned forward, his expression shifting to one of genuine curiosity. "Tell me something, Zara. When you imagine success 5 years from now, what does that look like for you?" The question caught her off guard, not a standard career development inquiry, but something more personal. She considered her answer carefully. 5 years from now, I want to have helped build something that matters. Not just profitable, but meaningful. I want to know that people's lives are better because of work I contributed to." Kieran nodded slowly. "Not VP of Marketing or Chief Brand Officer. Titles are nice," Zara admitted, "but impact matters more." Something shifted in Kieran's expression, a recognition perhaps of a kindred spirit. "That's exactly how I felt when I started Luminary. Everyone told me to focus on quick exits and impressive titles, but I wanted to build something that would still matter a decade later." Their conversation continued well past the scheduled 30 minutes, expanding from campaign specifics to broader visions of how technology could serve humanity rather than the reverse. By the time Zara glanced at her watch, nearly 2 hours had passed. "I've completely monopolized your afternoon," she said, rising from her chair. "Best use of my time all day," Kieran replied simply. "Let's make this a regular thing. Weekly strategy sessions, just the two of us. No distractions, no other executives. just pure creative development. And so began their partnership, professional, productive, yet charged with an energy neither could deny. Each Wednesday afternoon, Zara would arrive with campaign updates and leave with expanded responsibilities. Kieran pushed her to think bigger, while she challenged him to consider perspectives outside his experience. The AI campaign exceeded all projections. Sales doubled initial forecasts, and industry publications praised Luminary for humanizing artificial intelligence in a way that connects rather than alienates. When the quarterly results were announced, Kieran publicly credited Zara's vision for the success, earning her admiration throughout the company. Their weekly meetings continued even after the campaign concluded, evolving into brainstorming sessions for Luminary's entire product ecosystem. During one such session, 3 months into her employment, they worked late into the evening, takeout containers and coffee cups scattered among strategy documents. The problem with the European expansion isn't the product adaptation, Zara argued, pacing in front of the whiteboard, where competing ideas were scrawled in their handwriting. It's cultural context. What resonates in Berlin completely misses in Barcelona. Kieran watched her from his position on the couch, jacket long discarded, tie loosened. So we customize by country rather than continent? By cultural region, she corrected, sketching a new diagram. Look at these engagement patterns. They cross political boundaries but align with cultural identities. We need campaigns that respect those distinctions. He rose to examine her work more closely, standing beside her at the whiteboard. This would increase production costs for marketing materials, but decrease wasted ad spend by targeting more effectively, she countered, turning to face him. The ROI. She stopped mid-sentence, suddenly aware of their proximity. In the months they'd worked together, they'd carefully maintained physical distance, no accidental touches, no lingering near each other's desks. But now, in the quiet of his office with the city lights glimmering beyond the windows, they stood close enough that she could detect the faint scent of his cologne. Kieran seemed equally aware, his eyes dropping briefly to her lips before returning to meet her gaze. The ROI would what? He asked softly. Zara swallowed, struggling to recapture her train of thought. Would justify the initial investment, she finished, her voice barely above a whisper. Neither moved away. The professional bubble that had contained their attraction developed hairline fractures, threatening to shatter completely. Zara, Kieran said, her name carrying a weight of unspoken questions. This is complicated, she replied, acknowledging what hung between them. Yes, he agreed. But some complications are worth navigating. The office fell silent, except for the distant hum of the climate system and the soft tick of the wall clock. Outside, the city continued its nighttime rhythm, oblivious to the moment of decision unfolding 40 stories above. We've been keeping this professional, Zara said carefully. We have, Kieran nodded. And we could continue that way, if that's what you want. What do you want? She asked, the question direct despite her racing heart. Kieran ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of uncertainty from the usually composed CEO. I'm falling in love with you, he admitted, the words hanging in the air between them. And I don't know what to do about it. The confession, raw, honest, vulnerable, broke the final barrier between them. Zara closed the distance, her hands finding his face as their lips met in a kiss that felt simultaneously like a beginning and an inevitability. His arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer as months of restrained attraction ignited. When they finally separated, both slightly breathless, Kieran rested his forehead against hers. I've been wanting to do that since you walked into that interview with coffee stains on your portfolio. Zara laughed softly. I've been wanting you to do that since you texted me that ridiculous confession about spilling your coffee on purpose. He brushed a strand of copper hair from her face, his expression growing more serious. This changes things. It does, she agreed, and it complicates them. I'm your boss, he acknowledged the elephant in the room. There are policies about this, expectations, potential consequences. Zara stepped back slightly, reality intruding on the moment. People will question my accomplishments. They'll say I earned my position through personal connection rather than merit. Not if they don't know, Kieran suggested after a moment's consideration. At least not until you've established yourself beyond any doubt. You want to keep this a secret? Zara asked, uncertainty crossing her features. Kieran took her hands in his. I want to protect your career and your reputation. You've earned every success through your own brilliant mind. I refuse to let anyone diminish that. And what about us? She asked softly. What would we be to each other? Partners, he said simply. Equals in private, even if we can't be in public. For now. Zara considered his words, weighing professional consequences against the pull of her heart. It won't be easy. Few things worth having are, he replied, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. Their relationship evolved with the same intensity that characterized their professional collaboration. By day, they maintained appropriate distance, their interactions witnessed by colleagues revealing nothing beyond mutual respect. But evenings and weekends became sacred territory, cooking dinner in Kieran's penthouse, exploring hidden corners of the city, sharing dreams and fears in the safety of private moments. 3 months into their secret relationship, they developed a rhythm that allowed them to balance professional obligations with personal connection. Zara's career continued its meteoric rise as she led Luminary's marketing department to unprecedented success. Kieran watched her flourish with pride, careful never to show favoritism that might undermine her achievements. On a rare weekend away at Kieran's lake house, they lay on the dock, watching stars reflect across the water's surface. Zara's head rested on his chest, his fingers trailing through her copper hair. Do you ever wonder if we should just go public? She asked, voicing the question that occasionally surfaced between them. Stop hiding, deal with the consequences, move forward. Kieran was quiet for a moment, considering. Sometimes, he admitted, when I want to hold your hand in a meeting, or take you as my date to industry events, but then I see how people look at you with genuine respect, how they acknowledge your ideas on their merits alone, and I think this is protecting something valuable. Zara turned to face him, her expression thoughtful in the moonlight. But for how long? Another month? A year? Forever? Not forever, he promised, brushing his lips against her forehead. Just until your position is so secure that no one could question it. Until your success is so clearly your own that our relationship becomes a footnote rather than a headline. She nestled closer into his embrace. I love you, she whispered against his neck, the words still new enough to send warmth spreading through his chest. I love you too, he replied, marveling at how 3 simple words could carry such weight. More than I thought possible. In that moment, watching shooting stars arc across the night sky, neither could imagine anything threatening what they'd built together. Their relationship, though hidden from public view, felt solid, a foundation on which they could eventually build something permanent and open. They didn't yet know that foundations could crack, that the very secrecy protecting them could become the weapon that would tear them apart. They didn't see the gathering storm on the horizon, didn't recognize that their private happiness had an expiration date neither had anticipated. For now, they existed in the beautiful bubble of new love, where possibilities seemed endless and obstacles manageable, where Zara Nightingale and Kieran Frost were simply 2 people who had found, in each other, exactly what they hadn't known they were searching for. If you've ever experienced that electric feeling of working alongside someone who just gets you, who challenges and inspires you to become your best self, let me know in the comments below. Those rare connections, whether professional, romantic, or both, can transform not just our careers but our entire lives. And if you're enjoying Zara and Kieran's journey so far, hitting that like button really helps share these stories with others who need to hear them. Sometimes we need reminders that authentic connections still happen in this disconnected world, even when they arrive in unexpected packages. 6 months into their secret relationship, Luminary Innovations prepared for its annual Investor Gala, a lavish affair that brought together the company's financial backers, industry leaders, and technology innovators. Held at the Metropolitan Museum's Temple of Dendur, the event served as both a celebration of the past year's successes and a preview of upcoming ventures. For Zara, The gala represented her first opportunity to witness the business side of Kieran's world up close. Though she had contributed significantly to Luminary's recent triumphs, the financial ecosystem supporting the company remained largely invisible to her daily work. "Are you nervous?" Talia asked, helping zip Zara into a floor-length emerald gown that matched her eyes. "More curious than nervous," Zara replied, securing a delicate silver earring. "These are the people who fund the projects I market. I want to understand how they think." What she didn't say was how strange it would feel to spend an evening in Kieran's presence without acknowledging their connection. 6 months of hidden glances, coded messages, and careful public distance had become second nature, but tonight would test their discretion under heightened scrutiny. The museum glowed with strategically placed lighting that highlighted both ancient architecture and modern technology displays. Waiters circulated with champagne flutes and hors d'oeuvres, while a string quartet played softly in the background. Digital screens showcased Luminary's latest innovations, many featuring marketing concepts Zara had personally developed. She arrived alone, as planned. Kieran would already be there, playing host to the company's most important supporters. They had agreed to maintain professional distance throughout the evening. A single dance near the end would be their only public interaction beyond necessary business conversations. Zara accepted a champagne flute and scanned the room, admiring how the ancient Egyptian temple created a dramatic backdrop for the gathering of modern power players. She recognized faces from financial magazines and tech publications, the elite circle that controlled billions in investment capital. "Impressive, isn't it?" came a voice beside her. "All this money in one room, and everyone trying to pretend they're here for the technology rather than the returns." Zara turned to find Rowan Archer, Luminary's CFO, observing the crowd with wry amusement. With his perpetually rumpled appearance and direct manner, Rowan seemed out of place among the polished executives, yet his financial brilliance had helped build Luminary from startup to empire. "I thought the technology was what generated the returns," Zara replied. Rowan smiled. "In theory, yes. In practice, it's more complicated. See that group by the north wall?" Zara followed his gesture to where several older men in expensive suits had gathered around a striking, silver-haired gentleman whose commanding presence seemed to pull others into his orbit. "Maxwell Sinclair," Rowan explained, Luminary's largest individual investor. "He's backed Kieran since the beginning, but lately he's been pushing for more control over company direction." "Is that unusual?" Zara asked, studying the man more carefully. "Investment always comes with strings." Rowan shrugged. "But Maxwell's strings are becoming ropes. And speaking of complications," he nodded toward the entrance where a tall, elegant blonde woman had just arrived, immediately drawing attention from across the room. "Vivian Sinclair," Rowan continued, "Maxwell's daughter, Harvard MBA, runs her own VC firm, and has been circling Kieran for months." Zara's fingers tightened imperceptibly around her champagne flute. "Circling?" Maxwell's been not so subtly suggesting a merger of families would strengthen business ties. Rowan glanced at Zara with unexpected perception. "Of course, that was before you came along." Zara maintained her neutral expression with effort. "I'm not sure what you mean. Mr. Frost and I are colleagues." Rowan's knowing smile told her he wasn't fooled. "Of course. Strictly professional." He finished his champagne. "As his friend, I'll tell you something. I've never seen him look at a colleague the way he looks at you when he thinks no one's watching." Before Zara could respond, Rowan nodded toward the room's center. "Ah, the introduction begins." Across the hall, Maxwell Sinclair had maneuvered through the crowd with his daughter to where Kieran stood, discussing projections with board members. The older man clapped Kieran on the shoulder with familiar authority, pulling him away from the conversation. From her position, Zara couldn't hear their exchange, but she could read body language. Maxwell performed introductions with the confidence of someone arranging pieces on a chessboard. Vivian extended her hand to Kieran with practiced grace, holding the contact several seconds longer than necessary. Kieran smiled politely, his CEO mask firmly in place. But Zara, who knew the subtle variations of his expressions, detected the slight tension around his eyes, the careful distance he maintained despite Maxwell's attempts to create proximity between him and Vivian. "They make a handsome couple, don't they?" Rowan commented, watching Zara's reaction carefully. "Is that what Maxwell is hoping for? A business merger through marriage?" Zara kept her voice light despite the knot forming in her stomach. "Old money thinks that way," Rowan confirmed. "And Maxwell is as old money as they come. 3 generations of Sinclair investment acumen, with Vivian poised to take over the empire." Throughout the evening, Zara watched Maxwell orchestrate repeated interactions between Kieran and Vivian. During dinner, they were seated together at the head table. For the presentation of Luminary's upcoming projects, Vivian stood at Kieran's side, her occasional comments earning appreciative nods from the investors. Each time Zara caught glimpses of them together, the knot in her stomach tightened. Vivian was stunning, accomplished and connected, the kind of woman who appeared in society pages alongside CEOs and industry leaders, the kind of partner who could open doors even Kieran couldn't access alone. "Miss Nightingale," a deep voice interrupted her thoughts. "I understand we have you to thank for Luminary's remarkably successful AI campaign." Zara turned to find Maxwell Sinclair himself, evaluating her with shrewd eyes. Up close, she could see the calculations behind his smile, assessing her value, measuring her influence. "It was a team effort," she replied modestly. "The technology itself deserved the spotlight." "Nonsense," Maxwell dismissed her humility with a wave. "Kieran tells me you're the finest marketing mind he's encountered in a decade." High praise from a man not given to exaggeration. Pride mingled with unease at his words. "Mr. Frost is a generous mentor." "Indeed." Maxwell's gaze shifted to where Kieran and Vivian were speaking with Japanese investors. "My daughter seems quite taken with your CEO. They share similar backgrounds: elite education, family legacy, natural leadership qualities." The statement hung in the air, its purpose unclear: observation, warning, or test. Zara maintained her professional smile. "Miss Sinclair seems very accomplished." "She is." Maxwell's attention returned to Zara, his assessment continuing. "Though I find your trajectory more interesting. Small-town origins, scholarship. To Northwestern, meteoric rise through merit rather than connection. Quite the American success story." Something in his tone suggested he had investigated her background thoroughly. The realization sent a chill through her despite the crowded room's warmth. "If you'll excuse me," Zara said, "I should check on the technology demonstrations. Several investors had questions about our interface design." Maxwell nodded, his expression revealing nothing. "Of course. I look forward to seeing your future contributions to Luminary's success." As the evening progressed, Zara found herself increasingly isolated despite the crowded room. Kieran remained surrounded by investors, with Vivienne never far from his side. Their planned dance seemed increasingly unlikely, as Maxwell controlled access to his protégé with the precision of a general commanding troops. Near midnight, as the event wound down, Zara slipped away to one of the museum's quiet alcoves, needing a moment away from scrutiny and speculation. She stood before an ancient statue, its serene face unchanged by centuries of human drama. "There you are." Kieran's voice came softly from behind her. "I've been trying to find a moment alone with you all night." Zara turned, drinking in the sight of him, handsome in his tuxedo though. Weariness lined his eyes after hours of performing for investors. "You've been busy," she observed, keeping her distance despite wanting to straighten his slightly crooked bow tie. "Maxwell seems determined to keep you occupied." Kieran glanced over his shoulder before stepping closer. "Maxwell has his own agenda. Always has." "An agenda that includes Vivian?" Zara asked directly, the question that had burned in her mind all evening finally escaping. Kieran's expression softened. "Is that what's bothering you?" "Vivian Sinclair." "It's not just her," Zara replied carefully. "It's watching Maxwell maneuver you two together, while the entire investment community observes and approves. It's seeing how perfectly she fits into this world of wealth and influence." "Zara," Kieran said her name with tender exasperation, risking a brief touch to her arm. It's nothing. Maxwell has his own agenda, but I'm not interested. Would it be better for Luminary if you were? The question emerged before she could reconsider, voicing the fear that had grown throughout the evening. Kieran's hesitation was brief, but noticeable. Maybe on paper, but I don't make my personal decisions based on balance sheets. He moved to kiss her, but Zara stepped back, aware of their exposed position. Not here. Come to my place later, he suggested. We need to talk properly. Without all this, he gestured to the gala beyond their alcove. I can't tonight, Zara lied, suddenly needing space to process her conflicting emotions. Early meeting tomorrow. Disappointment flickered across his features. Tomorrow evening, then? I'll cook. Tomorrow, she agreed, trying to ignore the voice whispering that something fundamental had shifted between them. As they prepared to rejoin the gala separately, Vivian appeared at the alcove entrance, her expression cooling as she took in their proximity. There you are, Kieran, she said, pointedly ignoring Zara. Daddy's looking for you. The Singapore investors are leaving and they want a final word. Of course, Kieran replied, slipping back into his CEO persona with practiced ease. He gave Zara a final glance. Excellent work tonight, Miss Nightingale. Your presentations impressed everyone. The formality stung despite its necessity. Thank you, Mr. Frost. Zara watched them walk away, Vivian's hand resting lightly on Kieran's arm with casual possessiveness. The gesture spoke volumes. Comfortable, entitled, public. Everything their relationship couldn't be. Later that night, as her taxi crawled through late-night traffic, Zara's phone lit up with a message from Kieran. I missed our dance. Rain check? She stared at the simple text, remembering his hesitation when she'd asked if Vivian would be better for Luminary. The truth had been in that pause, the acknowledgement, however brief, that a different choice might make business sense. And rain check confirmed, she replied, the words feeling hollow as she tried to ignore the growing certainty that their carefully constructed private world had just collided with a reality they couldn't control. A reality where Vivian Sinclair represented not just a romantic rival, but a business advantage, where Maxwell's influence could shape Luminary's future, where love, no matter how genuine, might not be enough against the pressures of empire to building. As she gazed out at the city lights, Zara wondered how long they could continue pretending their relationship existed in a vacuum, untouched by the power dynamics and business considerations that governed Kieran's world. And for the first time since they'd begun, she allowed herself to consider a future where their story might not have a happy ending. 3 weeks after the investor gala, Zara sat at her favorite cafe, waiting for Kieran. They had settled back into their routine, dinners at his penthouse, strategy sessions. That extended into personal time, weekend escapes when his schedule allowed. The evening of the gala seemed like a distant concern, one she'd almost convinced herself she'd overreacted to. She checked her watch. 30 minutes late, unusual for Kieran, who prided himself on punctuality. She sent another text, sipped her cooling latte, and opened her news app to pass time. The headline stopped her heart, mid-beat. Tech mogul Kieran Frost engaged to Vivian Sinclair, daughter of investment tycoon. Her fingers trembled as she tapped the article. A photo appeared. Kieran and Vivian at some society function, her hand resting on his chest, an enormous diamond glittering on her finger. The caption dated the image to last night. Industry sources confirmed the engagement occurred during a private dinner at Maxwell Sinclair's estate. The merger of these powerful families signals a new chapter for Luminary Innovations, with Sinclair Holdings expected to increase investments substantially. The wedding is planned for 6 months from now. Zara's vision blurred. Her phone buzzed with an incoming message from Kieran. Running late. Can we reschedule? Emergency board meeting called. Not a word about an engagement. Not a hint that while she sat waiting, the entire business world was celebrating his upcoming marriage to another woman. She left money for her untouched coffee and walked out into the cold afternoon, moving on autopilot. Back in her apartment, She ignored Talia's concerned questions and locked herself. In her bedroom, sitting in darkness as reality crashed over her in waves. 3 hours ago she had been in love, planning a weekend away with the man she thought loved her. Now she was… What? The secret girlfriend? The office affair? The woman foolish enough to believe she mattered more than business strategy? Morning arrived without sleep. Zara dressed with mechanical precision, applied makeup that concealed her reddened eyes, and arrived at the office earlier than usual. If colleagues noticed her pallor, they attributed it to dedication rather than devastation. She had almost reached her office when Rowan intercepted her in the hallway. "You've heard," he said. Not a question, but a statement of fact. Zara maintained her professional mask. "About the engagement?" "Yes." "Congratulations to Mr. Frost are in order." Rowan studied her face, compassion in his eyes. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. He got blindsided at the Sinclair dinner. Maxwell made the announcement before Kieran could stop it. "You don't need to make excuses for him," Zara replied, her voice low but steady. "He's a grown man who makes his own choices. Zara, I have a presentation to prepare." She stepped around him, unwilling to continue the conversation where others might overhear. Inside her office, she closed the door and pressed her forehead against the cool wood. 1 breath. 2. 3. She had survived worse than heartbreak. She would survive this too. For 8 hours, she immersed herself in work, ignoring the congratulatory whispers sweeping through the office, the speculation about what Vivian Sinclair's influence might mean for company direction. She fielded calls from partners and vendors, offering their well wishes for Luminary, responding with practiced enthusiasm about the exciting development. At 6:17 p.m., her office phone rang. Kieran's private line. "Zara Nightingale," she answered, her voice professionally detached. "I need to see you," Kieran said without preamble. "My office." Now. The line went dead before she could respond. For a moment, she considered ignoring the summons, but curiosity, or perhaps masochism, propelled her toward the executive elevator. His assistant's desk sat empty, the outer office quiet as most employees had departed. Zara knocked once on his door before entering. Kieran stood behind his desk, jacket off, tie loosened, looking exhausted but immaculate. The man she had held just 3 nights ago, whose laughter had warmed her skin, whose promises had filled her dreams. "Close the door," he instructed. Zara complied, then remained standing near the entrance. "Congratulations on your engagement," she said, the words tasting like ash. "The news seems to have delighted the investors." "This isn't how I wanted you to find out," Kieran began, running a hand through his hair. "Maxwell ambushed me at the dinner, made the announcement to the room before I could stop him, and yet you're wearing the mantle of fiancé quite comfortably," Zara observed. "The press seems convinced this union will strengthen Luminary considerably. It's complicated." "It's actually quite simple," Zara countered. 3 weeks ago, you told me Maxwell's plans for you and Vivian meant nothing, that you didn't make personal decisions based on balance sheets. Was that a lie, or did you change your mind when you saw the potential investment figures?" Kieran's expression hardened. "You don't understand the pressure." "No, I don't," Zara interrupted. "I don't understand how you could tell me you loved me on Sunday and become engaged to someone else on Tuesday. I don't understand how you could let me sit in that cafe waiting for you while the entire business world celebrated your engagement." She fought to keep her voice level, refused to give him the satisfaction of her tears. "Most of all, I don't understand how I could have been so wrong about who you are." "Things change," Kieran said, his voice taking on the cool authority he used in board meetings. "The company needs this alliance." "The company," Zara repeated, the words bitter on her tongue. "What about us?" "There can't be an us anymore, Zara." He looked down at the papers on his desk. "I'm sorry." The clinical detachment in his voice struck deeper than anger would have. This wasn't the man who had whispered love against her skin. This was the CEO, the empire builder, the man who calculated every move for maximum advantage. "Did you ever love me?" she asked, hating the vulnerability in the question but needing to know. His eyes met hers, and for a moment she saw a flash of the man she knew. It doesn't matter now. 4 words that answered everything. Not a denial, not a confirmation, a dismissal. Whatever they had shared had been weighed against Luminary's future and found expendable. No, she agreed quietly. I suppose it doesn't. She turned to leave, dignity intact despite the cracks spreading through her heart. Zara, he called as her hand touched the doorknob. I need you to stay professional about this. The marketing department will handle wedding announcements, and there will be considerable press. She looked back at him, incredulous. You expect me to market your wedding to another woman? I expect you to do your job, he replied, CEO mask firmly in place. Personal feelings aside, Zara nodded slowly. I'll do my job, Mr. Frost. For now. The following weeks passed in a fog of functionality. Zara arrived early, left late, and produced exceptional work with mechanical efficiency. She delegated wedding-related marketing to her team, citing other priorities that required her attention. If colleagues noticed her increased hours or decreased sociability, they attributed it to ambition rather than avoidance. She watched from a distance as Kieran and Vivian became fixtures in business publications. Their engagement photos showcased a perfect power couple, his dark intensity complementing her elegant beauty, their combined family fortunes representing a new dynasty in the making. Each image, each announcement, each congratulatory bouquet delivered to the executive floor carved another piece from Zara's heart. Yet outwardly, she remained composed, professional, focused. At night, alone in her apartment, she permitted herself brief moments of grief. Not for the man, she was beginning to understand he wasn't who she thought, but for the future she had imagined. For the trust she had given so completely. For the naivete that had allowed her to believe their love existed outside the calculations of power and advantage. 2 months after the engagement announcement, Zara sat in her darkened office, long after everyone else had departed. On her computer screen, a resignation letter awaited printing, simple, professional. Citing career advancement rather than heartbreaker's motivation, her finger hovered over the print button, but something held her back. Leaving felt like conceding defeat, like acknowledging that she couldn't separate professional success from personal devastation, that Kieran's betrayal had the power to chase her from a job she excelled at, a company she had helped build. She closed the document without printing. Not yet. She would leave on her terms, when staying cost more than going, when she had secured her next step rather than fleeing from her last. 4 more months passed. Wedding preparations accelerated, with the date set for the following weekend. Industry publications speculated about the guest list, the venue, the strategic alliances that might emerge from the reception seating chart. Zara watched it all from behind her professional mask, performing her role, with such convincing detachment that even she sometimes believed the lie. She had secured a position with a competing firm, negotiated an exceptional package, and prepared her exit with the same strategic precision she applied to marketing campaigns. On her final morning at Luminary, she printed the resignation letter that had waited 4 months in digital purgatory. As she rode the executive elevator to Kieran's office, she thought about the woman who had entered this building 3 years ago, portfolio stained with coffee, dreams shining in her eyes. That woman was gone, replaced by someone stronger, warier, but perhaps wiser. Someone who understood that love without integrity was just another transaction. Someone who had learned that walking away, however painful, was sometimes the only path to preservation. She clutched the resignation letter like a shield against her chest. After everything, she would exit with the dignity Kieran had discarded. She would speak her final truth, then vanish from his life as completely as his love had vanished from hers. Present day. The morning light filtered through the floor, 2 ceiling windows of Luminary. Innovations, painting golden streaks across the polished marble floors. Zara Nightingale's heels clicked rhythmically as she made her way toward the executive. Elevator, clutching her resignation letter like a shield against her chest. After 3 years as the company's leading marketing strategist, she was walking away. Not just from the job, but from him. The weight of the decision settled around her shoulders as the elevator ascended to the 40th floor. 3 years of memories contained in this building. 3 years of professional triumphs and personal heartbreak, culminating in this final act of self-preservation. Ms. Nightingale, Kieran's assistant, greeted her with professional courtesy. "He's expecting you." Of course he was. The CEO of Luminary Innovations was always prepared, always one step ahead. Except for the one time that mattered most. Zara nodded her acknowledgement and moved toward the heavy oak door that separated Kieran's office from the rest of the world. 1 deep breath. 2. She pushed the door open. Kieran Frost stood at the window of his penthouse office, watching the city below with the detachment of someone who had conquered it long ago. His dark suit was impeccable, his posture rigid with the control he exerted over every aspect of his life. Control that had once slipped, allowing her into his heart before business interests reclaimed priority. "Sir, Zara Nightingale is here to see you. She says it's urgent." A muscle in Kieran's jaw twitched. "Send her in." The heavy door swung open, and there she stood, the woman who had been his right hand, for 3 years, whose brilliant mind had helped propel Luminary to new heights. Zara's copper hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, her emerald eyes unreadable behind her professional mask. "Mr. Frost," she said, her voice steadier than her racing heart. "I'll keep this brief. I'm tendering my resignation, effective immediately." She placed the envelope on his desk, taking care not to let their fingers touch. She had rehearsed this moment for weeks, a clean break, professional and dignified. Kieran didn't reach for the letter. His ice-blue eyes narrowed as he studied her face, searching for something only he could see. Why? The single word hung between them, charged with unspoken history. Zara had prepared for this question, had crafted a perfect response about career growth and new opportunities. But standing before him, the man who had once known her better than anyone, the rehearsed words dissolved on her tongue. "Because I'm still in love with you," she said instead, the truth spilling out like water through broken glass. "And I can't stand by and watch you marry someone else." 7 words. 7 words that should never have escaped, that revealed everything she had tried to conceal beneath professionalism and distance. Kieran stared at her, shock written across his features. For a man who prided himself on always being prepared, always having a response, he seemed utterly speechless. Zara immediately regretted her outburst. This wasn't how she had planned it. She was supposed to be professional, composed. She was supposed to wish him well and walk away with her head held high. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "That was inappropriate. Please disregard." "Say it again," Kieran interrupted, his voice barely above a whisper. Zara faltered. "What?" "Say it again." He moved from behind his desk, closing the distance between them with deliberate steps. Zara stood her ground, though every instinct told her to retreat. "I'm still in love with you," she repeated, her voice steadier this time. "I've tried not to be. God knows I've tried. But I can't stay here pretending I'm okay with this." Kieran stopped just inches from her, close enough that she could see the faint stubble on his jaw, smell the familiar scent of his cologne. His eyes searched hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Why now?" he asked. "Why wait until a week before my wedding?" "Because I didn't think it mattered what I felt," Zara answered honestly. "You made your choice. But I realized I couldn't live with myself if I didn't at least tell you the truth before I left." Something shifted in Kieran's expression, a crack in the carefully constructed facade he'd maintained for months. "The truth," he repeated softly. "What if I told you I've been living a lie since the day I let you go?" Zara's heart stuttered. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I made the biggest mistake of my life," Kieran admitted, running a hand through his dark hair. "I convinced myself that sacrificing us for Luminary was the right decision, that I could learn to love Vivian, or at least build a partnership with her that made sense. And now you walk in here to resign, and with one sentence you've made me face what I've been denying for months." His voice broke slightly. "That I never stopped loving you either." The confession hung in the air between them, too fragile to touch, too important to ignore. Zara's mind raced with implications, with possibilities, with caution born from previous pain. "You're engaged, Kieran," The wedding is in a week. She took a step back, needing distance to think clearly. You can't just cancel your wedding because your employee confessed her feelings. I'm not cancelling it because of what you said, Kieran countered, his eyes never leaving hers. I'm cancelling it because of what I feel, because I've been lying to myself, to Vivian, to everyone. Because the thought of you walking out that door and out of my life is more painful than any business fallout could ever be. What about Luminary? Zara challenged, unwilling to surrender to hope so easily. What about Maxwell's investment? The merger of families everyone's been celebrating for months. Luminary will survive, Kieran said with newfound resolve. We built it to withstand more than the whims of one investor. And if Maxwell pulls out because I won't marry his daughter, then he was never the right partner for this company. He reached for her hands, holding them gently between his own. I lost sight of what matters, Zara. I let fear dictate my choices. Fear of failure, fear of disappointing the board, fear of not being the CEO. Everyone expected me to be, and now I'm more afraid of living without you than anything else. The sincerity in his eyes made her breath catch. This was the Kieran she knew, the man behind the CEO mask, the one who had once told her his dreams while they lay tangled in sheets at dawn. But Zara hadn't survived the past year by being naive. Words are easy, Kieran. Actions are harder. You're right, he acknowledged, and I have a lot to prove to you, but I'm asking for the chance to do that. Before she could respond, the office door swung open without a warning knock. Vivian Sinclair stood in the doorway, elegant in a cream designer suit, her expression darkening as she took in the scene before her, Kieran holding Zara's hands, standing close enough that their intentions were unmistakable. I see, Vivian said, her voice arctic. So, the rumors were true. Kieran dropped Zara's hands and turned to face his fiancée. Vivian, this isn't how I wanted to have this conversation. Clearly, Vivian replied, her gaze shifting to Zara with cool assessment. Miss Nightingale, I've heard so much about your professional capabilities. Zara felt a flush of embarrassment creep up her neck. Despite everything, she had never wanted to be the other woman, never wanted to hurt someone else in the process. I should go, she said quietly, reaching for her purse. No, Kieran said firmly. Please stay. He turned back to Vivian. We need to talk. Vivian crossed her arms. By all means, let's talk. Let's discuss how my fiancé is apparently in love with his marketing director, a week before our wedding. I'm sorry, Kieran said, and to his credit, he looked genuinely remorseful. I never meant to hurt you. Yet here we are, Vivian observed dryly. She glanced between them again, then surprised both Kieran and Zara by letting out a short laugh. God, the irony. Irony, Kieran repeated, confusion evident in his tone. I've been dreading this wedding as much as you have, Vivian admitted. Daddy's perfect business arrangement, complete with a prenup thicker than the Bible. Kieran stared at her. You don't want to get married either. Of course not, Vivian said, as if it were obvious. We barely know each other, Kieran. We've spent more time with our wedding planner than with each other in the past 6 months. Then why? The same reason you did, I imagine. Family expectations, business considerations. She shrugged elegantly. My father's vindictive streak. The tension in the room shifted subtly. Zara felt like she was watching a play where the script had suddenly changed. So, where does this leave us? Kieran asked carefully. Vivian considered for a moment. It leaves us with an opportunity, I think. You clearly want out of this engagement. So do I. The question is how to manage it without my father pulling his investment and sabotaging your company. Zara couldn't help herself. You'd help with that? Even after... She gestured vaguely between herself and Kieran. Vivian gave her an appraising look. Miss Nightingale, I have no personal interest in marrying a man who loves someone else. But I do have a vested interest in Luminary's success. My family's money is tied up in it after all. She turned back to Kieran. Besides, I've been looking for a graceful exit myself. This way, we can both save face. Kieran looked stunned. I don't know what to say. Say you'll call off the wedding publicly in a way that doesn't humiliate either of us, Vivian suggested. and that you'll meet with me and my lawyers tomorrow to discuss how we position this to my father and the investors. Consider it done." Kieran agreed without hesitation. Vivian nodded, satisfied. "Good. And Ms. Nightingale?" "Yes?" Zara responded, still trying to process the unexpected turn of events. "Make sure he's worth it this time." With those parting words, Vivian turned and walked out, closing the door firmly behind her. In the silence that followed, Zara and Kieran looked at each other, both slightly dazed by what had just transpired. "That was not what I expected," Kieran finished for her. A smile slowly spread across his face, the first real smile Zara had seen from him in months. "But it doesn't change what I said before. I love you, Zara. I never stopped." Zara felt the walls she'd built around her heart beginning to crumble. "I want to believe you," she said honestly. "But we can't just pick up where we left off. Too much has happened." "I know," Kieran acknowledged. "I hurt you. I broke your trust, and I'll spend as long as it takes earning it back." He took a step toward her, but didn't touch her, respecting the boundary she needed. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away," he continued, "but I'm asking for a chance to show you that I've learned from my mistakes, that I understand now what really matters." Zara looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not just the CEO who had broken her heart, but also the man who had once spilled coffee on her portfolio just to start a conversation. The man who knew her favorite songs and how she took her tea and what made her laugh until she cried. "I'm not withdrawing my resignation," she said finally. "At least, not yet. I need space to think, and we can't go back to how things were before, with me working under you while we're—" She trailed off, uncertain how to define what they might become. Kieran nodded, understanding in his eyes. The resignation letter still lay on his desk, unopened, a symbol of what almost was, and what might yet be. Sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the most unexpected outcomes. In moments of raw honesty, when we finally speak the truths we've been hiding from others and from ourselves, we create space for real change. If this story is resonating with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear that speaking their truth can change everything. That sometimes, the very words we're most afraid to say are the ones with the power to transform our lives in ways we never imagined possible. But our story isn't over yet. Zara and Kieran still have a journey ahead, one of rebuilding trust, redefining boundaries, and rediscovering what drew them together in the first place. Let's return to see what happens when the dust settles and the real work begins. "I understand," Kieran said, looking at the resignation letter still resting on his desk. "You need time, space. I owe you that much at least." The dynamic between them had shifted once again. For months, Kieran had been the powerful CEO, making decisions that affected both their lives with corporate precision. Now he stood before her, the carefully constructed walls of his authority crumbling, revealing the man beneath the title. "I don't know what happens next," Zara admitted. "This morning I came here expecting to leave Luminary forever. Now everything's changed, but I'm not sure what it's changed into." Kieran moved to the window, gazing out at the city skyline that had witnessed their entire story, from coffee-stained introductions to secret romance to heartbreaking separation. "I've spent 6 months making the wrong choice every day," he said quietly, "convincing myself it was for the company, for our investors, for our future. But the truth is, I was afraid." "Of what?" Zara asked, maintaining her distance despite the urge to close the gap between them. "Of how much I loved you," he admitted, turning to face her. "Of how vulnerable that made me feel. I've spent my whole life building walls, Zara, creating systems I could control, and then you came along and made me feel things I couldn't quantify or manage." His honesty, raw and unfiltered, touched something deep inside her. Yet caution kept her grounded, remembering how easily words could diverge from actions. "What about the wedding?" she asked, bringing reality back into focus. "The investors? Maxwell?" "I'll handle it," Kieran said with newfound determination, starting with a call to the wedding planner as soon as we finish talking. "Vivian and I will release a joint statement tomorrow, framing it as a mutual decision based on, well, the truth. that we're better business partners than life partners. And Maxwell? Will be furious initially, Kieran acknowledged. But he's a businessman above all. If Luminary continues to perform, he'll eventually see that forcing his daughter into an unhappy marriage wasn't necessary for financial success. Zara approached his desk, her fingers trailing along its polished surface. And us? What are we, Kieran? Whatever you want us to be, he replied. I've forfeited the right to make demands or set expectations. But I hope we can be partners again, in every sense of the word. Zara reached for her resignation letter, holding it between them like a physical manifestation of their crossroads. With deliberate movements, she tore it in half. Consider this on hold, she said. Not accepted, not rejected. Just pending. Relief flooded Kieran's features, a smile breaking through the tension that had dominated his expression. I can work with pending. I'm taking 2 weeks leave, Zara continued, her decision crystallizing as she spoke. I need time to think, to process everything that's happened. When I come back, we'll reassess my position here. Maybe explore that restructuring you mentioned. Of course, Kieran agreed immediately. Take whatever time you need. The marketing department can function without you for 2 weeks. But can you? The question slipped out, more vulnerable than she'd intended. His expression softened. No, he admitted. But I deserve the wait. As Zara walked out of his office, her steps were lighter than when she'd entered. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in months, she felt something she'd nearly forgotten. Hope. The news of Kieran Frost and Vivian Sinclair's cancelled wedding broke the next morning, sending shockwaves through business circles and society pages alike. The official statement cited mutual recognition that our partnership works better in business than in marriage and assured investors that the professional relationship between Luminary Innovations and Sinclair Holdings remained strong. What the statement didn't mention was the real reason behind the cancellation, the 7 words spoken by a woman who had finally found the courage to speak her truth. Zara watched the story unfold from the sanctuary of her apartment, where she had begun her 2-week leave. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from colleagues and friends, all wondering if she knew the inside story. She answered none of them. On the 3rd day of her self-imposed retreat, there was a knock at her door. She opened it to find Kieran standing there, looking decidedly un-CEO-like in jeans and a simple blue shirt. I know you said you needed time, he began apologetically, and I promise I'll leave if you want me to, but I realized there was something I needed to say to you that couldn't wait. Zara leaned against the doorframe. I'm listening. I was a coward, Kieran said bluntly. When I ended things between us, I told myself it was for the company, for our investors, for our future. But the truth is, I was scared. Of what? Zara asked quietly. Of how much I loved you, he admitted. Of how vulnerable that made me feel. I've spent my whole life building walls, Zara, creating systems I could control. And then you came along and made me feel things I couldn't quantify or manage. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of nervousness she remembered well. So when Maxwell suggested the arrangement with Vivian, I convinced myself it was the rational choice, the safe choice. I told myself our relationship was a distraction, a liability. And now, Zara prompted when he fell silent. Now I know that loving you isn't a liability. It's the greatest asset I have. His eyes met hers, unflinching in their honesty. I don't expect you to forgive me overnight, but I wanted you to know that I understand why I made the mistake I did, and I'll never make it again. Zara felt the last of her resistance melting away. She stepped back from the doorway. Would you like to come in? I was just about to make tea. Relief washed over Kieran's face. I'd like that very much. They spent the afternoon talking, really talking, about everything that had happened, about the pain they'd both experienced, the lessons they'd learned, the changes they wanted to make. I've been thinking about what happened, Zara said as they sat across from each other at her small kitchen table. About why I didn't fight harder when you ended things. Kieran looked surprised. You think you should have fought? Not exactly, she clarified. But I accepted your decision too easily, as if I'd been expecting it all along. as if I didn't believe I deserved to be chosen over business considerations. That was my failure, not yours, Kieran insisted. Maybe, Zara acknowledged, but it revealed something important about me. I realized I've always been waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the moment when people decide I'm not worth the effort. I think that's why I kept our relationship secret, even when it was my idea, not just yours. Part of me believed it couldn't last. Kieran reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. And now? Now I'm learning that I deserve to be chosen, she said with quiet confidence. That love shouldn't be something I hide or apologize for. You've always deserved that, Kieran said softly. I was too caught up in my own fears to see how my choices reinforced your doubts. As daylight faded into evening, they ordered takeout from their old favorite place and ate it sitting cross-legged on Zara's living room floor, reminiscent of late nights spent planning marketing campaigns. I've been thinking about your job offer, Zara said as they finished their meal. Kieran looked up, careful to keep his expression neutral. And I have a counter-proposal, she said. What if, instead of restructuring my position within Luminary, we created something new? A partnership venture between Luminary and my own marketing consultancy. Kieran's eyebrows rose. Your own company? Zara nodded. It's something I've been considering for a while. This way, I could still work with Luminary, but as an equal partner rather than an employee. And I could take on other clients too, build something that's truly mine. I think it's brilliant, Kieran said, genuine admiration in his voice. You've always had the talent and vision for it. It would also give us space to figure out us, Zara added, without the complications of a direct reporting relationship. Kieran reached across the space between them, taking her hand in his. I like the sound of that. Figuring out us, one day at a time, Zara cautioned, though she didn't pull her hand away. We can't just pick up where we left off. I don't want to, Kieran surprised her by saying. Where we left off wasn't working. I want to build something better this time, something based on honesty and partnership. As darkness fell outside, they moved to the small balcony of Zara's apartment, watching the city lights illuminate the skyline. Kieran stood behind her, close but not touching, respecting the boundaries she needed. What scares you most about trying again? He asked quietly. Zara considered the question, appreciating his directness. That you'll revert to making decisions unilaterally, that when pressure comes, and it will, you'll shut me out rather than facing it together. Kieran nodded, accepting her fear without defensiveness. I've done that my whole life. Not just with you, but with everyone. Shouldering burdens alone, believing it made me stronger. And what scares you? Zara asked in return. That I won't be enough, he admitted after a moment's hesitation. That without the CEO title between us, without the trappings of success and power, you'll see I'm just a man with flaws and doubts like anyone else. Zara turned to face him, her expression softening. Kieran, I fell in love with you during late nights discussing vintage, record collections and debating the best ramen in the city, not with your Coma office or your investment portfolio. I'm learning that sharing vulnerability isn't weakness, he said. It's the foundation of true partnership. That's something I never understood before you. Zara looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not just the man who had broken her heart, but also the one brave enough to acknowledge his mistakes and fight for a second chance. I think, she said carefully, that we've both grown in the time we've been apart. Maybe we needed that space to become the people who could make this work. Kieran's eyes filled with hope. Does that mean you're willing to try? In answer, Zara leaned forward and pressed her lips to his, a gentle kiss that held the promise of new beginnings. I'm willing to try, she whispered. In that moment, under the vast expanse of city lights, they made a silent vow. To themselves and each other, this time, they would build something real, something honest, something that could withstand the pressures of the world because it was founded on truth rather than convenience. They had walked through fire and emerged changed, more authentic versions of themselves, ready to create a love story, defined not by secret meetings and hidden feelings, but by the courage to stand together in the full light of day. 6 months later, The Nightingale Strategies launch party transformed the rooftop garden of the Sterling, a venue chosen, not for its prestige, but for its panoramic view of the city where Zara and Kieran's story had unfolded. String lights twinkled overhead as dusk settled across the skyline, illuminating the faces of industry, leaders, potential clients, and the core team Zara had carefully assembled over the previous months. To authentic connections, Zara raised her champagne flute, addressing the gathered crowd. Her emerald dress caught the golden hour light, copper hair loose around her shoulders, a deliberate contrast to the tightly controlled image she had maintained at Luminary. In marketing, we often talk about brand authenticity. At Nightingale Strategies, we believe authenticity begins with how we connect with each other before it ever reaches consumers. She looked across the crowd to where Kieran stood, not at her side as CEO of Luminary, but among the guests as her equal, her partner in more ways than one. He lifted his glass in response, pride evident in his smile. Nightingale Strategies exists to bridge the gap between corporate vision and human experience, Zara continued, her voice carrying across the attentive audience, to translate innovation into impact, to transform what companies create into what people care about. As applause rippled through the gathering, Rowan Archer sidled up to Kieran. "She's magnificent," he observed, watching Zara move effortlessly among guests, her natural warmth drawing people in. "Luminary misses her brilliance." "Luminary hasn't lost her," Kieran corrected, his eyes never leaving Zara. "We've gained something far better, a partnership based on mutual respect rather than hierarchy." The partnership agreement between Luminary Innovations and Nightingale Strategies represented a radical departure from traditional corporate structures. Zara's company would serve as Luminary's primary marketing partner while maintaining independence to pursue other clients. The arrangement gave her creative freedom while leveraging the powerful foundation she had built during her years at Luminary. "Maxwell still fuming about the cancelled wedding?" Rowan asked, nodding towards several Sinclair Holdings executives who had notably attended without their CEO. "He declined his invitation," Kieran acknowledged, "but he didn't forbid his team from coming. I count that as progress." The fallout from the cancelled engagement had been significant but manageable. Maxwell had initially threatened to pull all Sinclair investments, but Vivian, in a surprising show of autonomy, had convinced him that emotional reactions made for poor business decisions. The compromise left Sinclair Holdings as a reduced but continuing investor in Luminary, while Vivian took a more prominent role in managing their technology portfolio. "How's Vivian doing with her new authority?" Rowan inquired, genuine curiosity in his tone. "Thriving," Kieran replied. "Turns out she has a remarkable eye for emerging tech. She's pushed us to acquire 2 startups I might have overlooked. And, personally," a slight smile crossed Kieran's face, "rumor has it she's dating that architect from the Chicago office. Off the record, of course." "Of course," Rowan agreed with a matching smile. "Funny how things work out when people follow their hearts instead of balance sheets." As the evening progressed, Zara found moments to connect with each guest personally, a strategy that reflected her business philosophy. When she finally reached Kieran, she slipped her hand into his, the gesture natural and unguarded. "What do you think?" she asked quietly. "Will Nightingale Strategies survive its first night?" "It will thrive," Kieran replied with certainty. "You've already secured 3 clients beyond Luminary, and I've overheard at least 2 more expressing interest tonight." Zara leaned against him slightly, allowing herself a moment of vulnerability amid her professional triumph. "I couldn't have done this without you." "That's where you're wrong," Kieran countered gently. "You absolutely could have, but I'm grateful you allowed me to support your vision rather than trying to contain it." Their dynamic had evolved over the past 6 months, from the cautious reconnection in Zara's apartment to the gradual rebuilding of trust through honest conversations and consistent actions. They had learned to navigate disagreements without power dynamics, to share vulnerabilities without fear of judgment, to love each other for their authentic selves rather than idealized images. "There's something I've been wanting to show you," Kieran said, glancing at his watch. "Can you slip away for 15 minutes? Zara raised an eyebrow. It's my launch party. Shouldn't I stay until the end? Trust me, he said simply. 15 minutes. She nodded to her assistant, indicating she'd return shortly, then followed Kieran to the elevator. Instead of descending to the street level, he pressed the button for the very top floor. Where are we going? Zara asked as the elevator climbed higher. One more floor up, Kieran replied cryptically. The elevator opened to a maintenance area with a single door marked Roof Access Authorized Personnel Only. Kieran produced a key card, swiping it through the reader. Should I ask how you got authorized access to the roof? Zara teased as he held the door for her. I know people who know people, he responded with a playful smile. They emerged onto the highest point of the Sterling, a section above the garden rooftop where the launch party continued below. This space was raw and unfinished, without the carefully designed landscaping of the lower level. But what it lacked in polish, it made up for in perspective, offering a completely unobstructed 360-degree view of the city. In the center of the space stood a small table with 2 chairs, a bottle of champagne chilling in an ice bucket, and a single white envelope. What is this? Zara asked, taking in the scene. Do you recognize this place? Kieran asked. Instead of answering, Zara looked around, then at the view, understanding dawning in her eyes. This is directly above where we had our first professional dinner, isn't it? At La Terrasse? Kieran nodded, pleased she remembered. The very same location, just 20 stories higher. Why are we here? Because I wanted to mark this moment properly, Kieran said, leading her to the table. Tonight you launched your company, something entirely yours, built on your vision and expertise. It's a culmination of everything you've worked for. He pulled out her chair, then took his seat across from her. And I wanted to celebrate that achievement in a place that represents how far we've come. Higher perspective, clearer view. Nothing blocking the horizon. Zara felt tears prickling behind her eyes at the thoughtfulness of his gesture. It's perfect. Kieran poured 2 glasses of champagne, then slid the white envelope across the table to her. There's something else. She opened the envelope to find a deed inside, legal documentation for a property she didn't recognize. What is this? It's a building in the Riverside district, Kieran explained. A former textile factory with incredible architectural bones. I purchased it last month. Zara looked up, confused. You bought a textile factory. Why? Because Nightingale Strategies will need a permanent home once your current office lease expires. His eyes held hers, intense yet gentle. And because I thought it might also be the perfect location for Luminaries. New Community Innovation Center, the project you proposed before you left. You're implementing my community center idea? Zara asked, genuine surprise in her voice. With some modifications, Kieran acknowledged. The building has enough space for both. Nightingale Strategies on the top 2 floors with the best views, the Innovation Center occupying the main level, and mezzanine, open to the public and community organizations. Zara studied the documents, understanding the significance of what he was offering. You're suggesting our companies share a home. I'm suggesting more than that, Kieran said quietly. He reached across the table, taking her hands in his. The deed is in both our names, Zara, not our companies, our names. It's an investment in our shared future, whatever form that takes. The weight of his words settled between them. Not a traditional proposal, but something equally meaningful. A commitment to building something lasting together, both professionally and personally. Are you asking me to move in with you? Zara clarified, her heart racing. I'm asking you to build a life with me, Kieran answered. One where we create spaces, literal and figurative, that reflect who we are together. The building can be whatever we decide, offices, home, community space, or all of these. The details matter less than the intention behind them. He held her gaze, vulnerability evident in his expression. What matters is that I'm choosing you, not just today but every day forward, not as a business advantage or a convenient arrangement, but as my partner in everything that matters. Zara felt emotion welling up. Joy mingled with the satisfaction of having reached this moment honestly, having earned this connection through truth rather than compromise. Will you say something? Kieran asked after a moment of silence. Zara smiled, reaching into her clutch and pulling out a small box of her own, which she slid across the table to him. Great minds think alike. Kieran opened the box to find a key, simple, unadorned, attached to a silver compass keychain. What's this? He asked. The key to my heart, Zara said with a small laugh. Too cheesy. Actually, it's the key to my apartment. I was going to ask you tonight if you wanted to move in together. As a first step, relief and joy transformed Kieran's expression. So that's a yes to the building? It's a yes to everything, Zara confirmed. The building, the future, all of it. She stood and moved around the table, sitting on his lap and bringing her lips to his in a kiss that sealed their agreement more effectively than any contract. When they separated, Kieran held her close, his expression growing serious. I have one more question. You're full of questions tonight, Zara teased. Just one more, he promised. His voice softened as he looked into her eyes. Will you marry me, Zara Nightingale? 7 words. The same number that had shattered his previous engagement, now offered to build something new. 7 words that closed one chapter and opened another. Zara touched his face gently, memorizing the moment. Yes, Kieran Frost, I will marry you. Above them, stars emerged in the darkening sky. Below, the city pulsed with energy and possibility. And between them, a promise took root, to love honestly, to partner equally, to build something authentic in a world too often governed by appearances. And 5 months later, Nightingale Strategies and Luminary Innovations win Innovation Partnership Award. The headline dominated industry publications following the annual Technology Impact Awards. The accompanying photos showed Zara and Kieran accepting the award together. Equal. Partners representing complementary companies that had redefined collaborative business models. Their partnership revolutionizes how tech companies approach marketing and community engagement, the article stated. The Riverside Innovation Center provides both cutting-edge technology education for underserved communities and real-world feedback for product development. This symbiotic relationship between corporation and community creates measurable impact while driving business growth. What the article didn't mention was the personal foundation beneath the professional success, the restored trust, the hard conversations, the consistent choice to prioritize transparency over convenience, the wedding rings they now wore publicly, no longer hiding their connection, but celebrating it as a strength rather than a liability. The transformed textile factory had become exactly what they'd envisioned, a physical manifestation of their partnership philosophy. Nightingale Strategies occupied the upper floors, with panoramic windows and collaborative spaces that fostered creativity. The Innovation Center welcomed community members, students, and technology enthusiasts to learn, explore, and contribute to product development. And a private penthouse suite combined home and workspace for the couple, blending their personal and professional lives in a way that honored both. Ms. Nightingale, Mr. Frost, their assistant called from the doorway of the conference room where they were reviewing quarterly results. Maxwell Sinclair is here for your meeting. They exchanged a brief glance. This meeting had been months in the making. After the initial fallout from the cancelled engagement, Maxwell had maintained a rigid distance, communicating only through attorneys and financial representatives. His request for a personal meeting had come unexpectedly following Luminary's record-breaking quarter. Send him in, Kieran responded, standing as Maxwell entered. The older man looked somewhat diminished from the commanding presence who had once orchestrated social and financial maneuvers with equal authority. His silver hair had thinned, and subtle lines of fatigue marked his face. Thank you for agreeing to see me, Maxwell began, his tone more subdued than the imperious manner they remembered. Please have a seat, Zara offered, professional courtesy masking her curiosity about this unexpected visit. Maxwell settled into a chair, studying them both before speaking again. I owe you an apology, he said finally. Both of you. The statement hung in the air, surprising in its directness. I pushed for an arrangement that would have made at least 3 people miserable. Maxwell continued. My daughter included. I convinced myself it was for business reasons, but the truth is, I wanted control. Over Vivian's future, over Luminary's direction, over assets I didn't create but wanted to govern. Kieran maintained a neutral expression. What changed your perspective? Success is a persuasive argument, Maxwell acknowledged with a small smile. Your companies have thrived despite my reduced investment. But more importantly, my daughter is happier than I've seen her in years, building her own path rather than following mine. He looked directly at Zara. And you, Ms. Nightingale, have proven that authentic leadership creates more value than strategic marriages ever could. I appreciate your candor, Zara responded carefully. I haven't come just to apologize, Maxwell continued. I've come with a proposal. Sinclair Holdings would like to reinvest in Luminary Innovations and make an initial investment in Nightingale Strategies, on standard terms, without special conditions or board seats. Simply as an investor who recognizes good business when he sees it. Kieran's eyebrows rose slightly. That's quite a change in approach. Old dogs can learn new tricks, Maxwell replied with unexpected humility, especially when their children point out their mistakes with unflinching clarity. Vivian has become quite the advocate for authentic business relationships. The meeting concluded with tentative agreements for further discussions, Maxwell departing with the diminished arrogance of a man who had recognized the limitations of his old methodologies. Well, Zara said once they were alone again, that was unexpected. Kieran moved to the window, looking out at the city that had witnessed their entire journey. Do you think he's sincere? About the investment, yes, Zara assessed. About personal growth? Time will tell. She joined him at the window, slipping her hand into his. Does it matter? We succeeded without his approval or his money. We'll continue regardless of whether he reinvests. Kieran brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss against her wedding ring. You're right. His opinions stopped being relevant the moment I chose you. That evening, as the sun set over the city skyline visible from their penthouse windows, they celebrated not just their professional recognition or Maxwell's unexpected olive branch, but the deeper victory, a partnership built on truth rather than convenience, on mutual respect rather than power dynamics. Their journey had transformed them both, Kieran learning that vulnerability created strength rather than weakness, Zara discovering that her value wasn't diminished by love, but multiplied by it. Together, they had built something neither could have created alone, a relationship that enhanced rather than compromised their individual brilliance. And it had all begun with 7 words spoken in a moment of raw honesty, because I'm still in love with you. Words that had shattered one future to create a better one. Words that had reminded them both that sometimes the most dangerous risk isn't in what we say, but in what we leave unspoken. 7 years later, the annual Nightingale Frost family photo had become increasingly chaotic with each passing year. What had once been a simple portrait of Zara and Kieran now included 5-year-old twins Emma and Ethan, 3-year-old Lily, and their newest addition, 7-month-old Alexander, who refused to look at the camera, despite the photographer's animated attempts to capture his attention. Maybe we should try again tomorrow, Zara suggested, bouncing Alexander on her hip while Emma and Ethan chased each other around the living room of their weekend home, a restored farmhouse 2 hours from the city. Tomorrow's the innovation showcase, Kieran reminded her, capturing Lily as she attempted to follow her older siblings. We need to be back in the city by noon, Zara sighed, then laughed as Alexander finally looked toward the camera, only to blow a perfect spit bubble at precisely the wrong moment. Okay, let's call it. The Christmas cards will feature authentic chaos this year. The photographer packed up, leaving the family to their Sunday evening routine. As Kieran prepared dinner with Lily helping from her special step stool, Zara settled on the porch swing, with Alexander watching Emma and Ethan construct an elaborate fort from fallen branches in the yard. Motherhood had come with its own learning curve, one that challenged Zara's perfectionism and Kieran's need for control in ways neither had anticipated. The twins had arrived just as Nightingale Strategies expanded internationally, creating a crash course in balancing professional ambition with personal priorities. Lily's birth coincided with Kieran stepping back from daily operations at Luminary to focus on their foundation work. And Alexander had surprised them when they thought their family was complete, teaching them that the best plans sometimes needed joyful revision. "Dinner in 15, Kieran called from the doorway. Lily, on his hip with flour, somehow dusted across both their noses. "If we can convince our architectural prodigies to wash their hands." "Emma, Ethan, dinner soon," Zara called. The twins waved acknowledgement without interrupting their important construction project. As twilight settled over their property, the family gathered around the farmhouse table, a deliberate contrast to the sleek modern aesthetic of their city penthouse. Here, mismatched chairs accommodated growing bodies, and the ancient wood bore marks of art projects, science experiments, and countless family meals. "Our turn for roses and thorns," Emma announced, referring to their dinner tradition of sharing the best and hardest parts of each day. "I'll start. My rose is building the superfort with Ethan. My thorn is that we have to go back to the city tomorrow." "My rose is the same as Emma's," Ethan contributed. "My thorn is that Alexander drooled on my favorite book." "He's a baby," Lily stated with the serious authority of an older sister. "Babies drool on everything. My rose is helping Daddy make pasta. My thorn is—" She considered deeply, her small brow furrowing. "I don't have a thorn today." "That's wonderful, sweetheart." Zara smiled. "Some days are all roses. Your turn, Mommy," Emma prompted. Zara looked around the table at the family they had created, at Kieran feeding tiny pasta pieces to Alexander, while simultaneously listening to Ethan's elaborate plans for fort expansion, at the girls with their copper hair and their father's blue eyes, at the life they had built that exceeded any vision she might have imagined when she stood outside Kieran's office with her resignation letter 7 years earlier. "My rose is this moment, right now," she said simply. "All of us together. No thorns?" Lily asked. "Not today," Zara confirmed. "Daddy's turn," Ethan announced. Kieran looked up from helping Alexander, his expression softening as he met Zara's gaze across the table. "My rose is the same as Mummy's. This family is everything I never knew I needed." Later, after bedtime stories and goodnight kisses, after fort blueprints were safely stored for tomorrow's construction, and tiny pajama-clad bodies finally surrendered to sleep, Zara and Kieran sat on the porch swing in comfortable silence, a shared blanket draped across their laps against the autumn chill. "Do you ever think about how differently things might have turned out?" Kieran asked, his arm around her shoulders, fingers playing absently with her copper hair, now streaked with occasional strands of silver. "If I hadn't said those 7 words," Zara mused. "Sometimes. But then I look at our children, our companies, the foundation work, everything we've built together. It's hard to imagine any other path leading somewhere better than this." Kieran nodded, his gaze drifting to the stars emerging above their rural retreat. "The twins asked me today if I always knew I wanted to marry you." "What did you tell them?" "The truth," he replied, "that I knew from the moment you walked into that interview with coffee stains on your portfolio, but I almost lost you because I was afraid to choose love over business." Zara leaned into him, still marveling after all these years at how perfectly they fit together. "And now I make that choice every day," Kieran said simply. "And it turns out, when you choose love, business finds its proper place in the order of things." The Riverside Innovation Center had expanded to 5 locations across the country, creating technology education opportunities in underserved communities while serving as incubators for Luminary's next generation of products. Nightingale Strategies had grown into a globally recognized firm specializing in authentic marketing for sustainable technology. And the Nightingale Frost Foundation, founded after Lily's birth, focused on supporting young women pursuing careers in technology, offering not just financial assistance, but mentorship from an extensive network of successful professionals. Their professional legacies were secured, but their greatest accomplishment slept upstairs in bedrooms decorated with space themes and fairy lights. 4 unique individuals who would carry forward values of authenticity, courage, and purpose. The innovation showcase tomorrow, Zara remembered suddenly. Did you review the presentation from the teen coding group? Already done, Kieran assured her. Their concept for the accessibility app is remarkable. And Alexander's pediatrician appointment? Rescheduled for Thursday when we're both available. This was the rhythm they had perfected, the seamless partnership that allowed them to manage multinational businesses, foundation work, and family life without sacrificing their connection to each other. 7 years, Zara marveled. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I walked into your office with that resignation letter. And sometimes it feels like we've always been this way, Kieran finished her thought. Like everything before was just preparation for finding each other. The night deepened around them, the sounds of their rural retreat, crickets, distant owls, the gentle creak of the porch swing, creating a peaceful backdrop to their conversation. I love you, Kieran said suddenly, turning to look directly into her eyes. More than I did 7 years ago, which I wouldn't have thought possible then. I love you too, Zara replied, the words as true now as they had been when spoken in desperation in his office years earlier. Enough to keep choosing you every day through board meetings and diaper changes and everything in between, as they sat together under the vast canopy of stars, their fingers intertwined. Beneath the shared blanket, they embodied the truth they had discovered. Together, that authentic connection, in business, in love, in family, required courage to speak one's truth and wisdom to recognize what truly mattered. Their story had begun with coffee stains and continued through heartbreak and reconciliation to this moment of profound contentment. And while the world knew them for their professional accomplishments, their most meaningful success was this life they had created together, imperfect, chaotic, and infinitely precious. If you've made it this far, you've witnessed how one moment of courage can transform your entire life. How 7 simple words spoken from the heart can change not just your own future, but create ripples that touch countless others. Zara and Kieran's journey reminds us that authentic success isn't measured by business metrics alone, but by the courage to align our professional and personal lives with our deepest values. That sometimes the relationships we build matter more than the empires we create. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us all that love, success, and happiness often require us to be brave enough to speak our truth. What words have you been holding back that might change your life? Share them in the comments below. Remember, the most dangerous words aren't always the ones we say. Sometimes they're the ones we leave unspoken.